president, I think played a big role in the way that even like our Western allies see the United States of America as like the world police. Because there are still a lot of people, I think, that just believe that eat up the propaganda. There are definitely people in the populations of these countries that live under the umbrella, under the protection of American empire, that certainly wanted to believe that, like, certainly wanted to believe that, like, America is, it fucks up from time to time, but it's like ultimately a force for good because the enemies are far scarier and far more evil.
And we provide, and also, but there's another piece of it, which is that, like, what do most people in a lot of these kinds of countries like care about? They care about where's their next meal coming from? Where are their kids' next meal is going to come from? How are they going to be able to build a house that doesn't fall on them? How are they going to have healthy and meaningful and long lives? And the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. So what states exist that promulgate a theory of how you're going to be able to do that to better the lives of people around you? Remember, there's no Soviet Union anymore, and we're not in a position where it seems like China is trying to advocate like an international like policy ethos that would reconstruct that. That's just not how they think about these issues.
Even if it was to its own benefit, they don't do it in their own fucking backyard. As I constantly point to the Philippines, like they could be engaging in acts of direct destabilization in the Philippines, like
they sell
arm the fucking Maoists,
and they sell arms to Israel. They sell arms to the Indonesian military, which uses them on poor islanders in West Papua New Guinea. Yeah. I mean, there is a real I would say that it's when you have a world without the Soviet Union in it means that we just have like this liberal international order, which means that it's the only force that has been able to like credibly advance a case for, well, here is how like things improve for you person there is the boss of global capitalism. It's the United States. And so, like there's a lot of people who, because that's the only answer on offer to how do things get better, like they're hoping for it, even if they don't agree, obviously, with what like the U.S. is doing to support Israel. Or even if it means they don't have like a favorable idea or a favorable opinion of the United States or something, but it does mean that like the answer that the U.S. has for all of these things, which is like, we'll help you get your bread up, we'll help you build like, strong native industries that will allow you to, whatever, like the answers that they have for this, which which are themselves often just lies, of course.
Yeah. It's going to be really good when foreign capital flows into your country. And by that, I mean, we're going to give your government money, and they're going to be bribed with like a piece of that money to bring that loan directly back into foreign corporations that will go into the pockets of not even the fucking laborers of said foreign corporations, but instead like the shareholders.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the examples that to me I've thought about a lot lately is, of course, just because of like the green the green transition. Is thinking about like the DRC and thinking about places like Kolwezi in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where again, like the value chain is like it may as well not exist for the people actually picking coltan out of the earth with their hands. Like what promise is made to them?
Yeah. Well, if we improve their material circumstances too good, then it's gonna be too costly to extract these minerals and extract these fucking natural resources that we need for cheap goods, cheap consumer items. So we can't do that.
And if you want to also like add a little bit to it, I'll like give a bit of historical context to it. Like part of the reason that these places don't have the authority or the ability, the domestic integrity to be able to, develop their resources in their own way. Again, to develop in ways that aren't reliant on like making sure that the West will give you money. Those futures, those alternate paths that they could have taken were stolen from them because we killed their leaders, because we destabilized their neighborhoods, if not the countries themselves.
Yeah.
And continued to do so because it suited our prerogatives.
Vitor, okay, here, let's just give you the summarization of this conversation. With just 7% of Democrats now saying Israel's war on Gaza is fully justified, Ben Rhodes, who, again, like I said, self-hating a Jewish man, Ben Rhodes, according to Israel Defenders, says, why are we giving billions of military aid to a corrupt far-right autocrat engaged in war crimes? Tommy Vitor acknowledges Democrats are afraid to touch this, but if you can actually make an argument why we should rethink this relationship, and maybe it doesn't make sense to send $3.8 billion a year, which, by the way, interesting number. Who was the who came up with that? Whose number is that? That's weird. Who was the guy?
Who was the president?
Right. That was Obama. That was Obama. Obama's number. 3.8 over a decade on his way out, which we continued, of course, because once there's that money is allocated, that will continue and it'll only increase. Anyway, 3.8 billion a year to Israel to kill civilians in Gaza. I think you'll be pushing an open door. He questioned whether it makes sense to provide a really rich country with $3+ billion in military support per year.
That's a Matt Iglesias line, by the way. He's like, when he's talked about this in the last few months, he makes this point about like, when I interviewed Obama and I asked him about Israel, it was why do we give so much money to a really rich country? To which I say yeah, that is an interesting question on one level, but
that's when
it just also is like there's an answer for that, which is that like they do things that we want them to do.
Yeah. That's also when Matty Iglesias had freshly come from his West Bank trip, and he was an anti-Zionist for a little bit. Wasn't there like a brief stint where Matt Iglesias was like, I think Israel's crazy racist.
I mean, it's a really hard thing. I think it's really hard for like warm-blooded, normal human beings to go to the West Bank and to come out of it with any other opinion, unless you're getting like a settler tour. Like, it's a sign. If you see that and your experience coming out of it is that what's going on there is anything other than like, a military occupation that's been going on for decades that rises to the level of genocide, frankly, at different moments in time.
Yeah.
Then like you're not like your human card may be revoked, pal. Like I think you're just not seeing things as they are, and there's something about it that separates you from the rest of us. That's why
I don't yell too much about J Street, even though they're like liberal Zionists. Ultimately, they still inevitably create a bunch of anti-Zionists by doing those West Bank trips. I mean, yourself included.
I was about to say, and Simone, when we were here talking about that, it was part of that experience. The piece of it, though, I mean, granted, I will say, like, J Street has moved away from doing that with younger people. It's just no longer part of it. Like, it's a thing that they did 10 years ago. It's not as dramatically part of their work now. But I mean, that's always why, like, I think if you could, like, if you want to change somebody's mind about this, then like send them to Hebron. Let them see what's going on.
The host argued that the U.S.-Israel relationship is a political liability tied to forever wars, moral hypocrisy, and authoritarianism. You don't have to be a scholar of history of the Middle East to know that it's cynical when Democratic politicians mouth support for a two-state solution while giving a blank check of support to a government that wants to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip. I mean, I still don't think like before these guys also become like one-staters, we're not going to have this like massive sea change among like people with institutional power that will get to a point where they also don't see like Hamas as like a reasonable counter to all of these things. Because right now, as someone who like constantly tries to understand where people are, like where people's moral compass is on this issue, yes, people are obviously horrified by everything that they're seeing, right? They're obviously horrified by everything that they're seeing, starving children in Gaza. They don't like that. They know that Israel's responsible for it, and they think Israel's fucked up for doing that. They don't like Israel, but they still haven't made that logical leap into, well, if these guys are this like unstoppable force of ethnic cleansing, then yeah, that breeds response, that invokes some kind of militant reaction. And until they get to that point, and until they like actually recognize that these guys aren't supposed to be perfect victims, and that there is going to be some kind of military reaction, they're still going to eat that bait every time someone invokes the name of Hamas.
I agree, and on top of which, also they're gonna they're still trapped. I mean, there's a reason, by the way, that like a lot of right wingers, especially like in tech, like that Sean McGuire guy, are now like harping on the word Islamist instead of saying Muslim and stuff, because there remains, I believe, like fundamentally, there is a refuse. Like the Ukraine stuff just like really highlighted it. Like there's some people we are allowed to see as human, and then there's some people who are just supposed to sit down, who are just supposed to lie down and take it, and that's it. And like and why are they supposed to lie down and take it? Well, because like their children are going to be, or do you see the coloring books? Do you see the coloring books that they give their kids? Like it's that, like that is the logic.
There's still so much there's still so much Islamophobia in America and in the Western world because of the war on terror and like justifying the war on terror, that like the average American still has this like weird position that is inherently contradictory, which implies that like on the one hand, like Israel's like the inflection point for Israel's military conquest here, while is totally inhumane. It kind of makes sense that they had to react because Hamas provoked them because they're scary, barbaric, rapist monsters. You know,
I mean, well, this remains one of the things that I was most agitated about in the immediate aftermath of October 7th was the number of people, liberals, who kept talking about like the systematic rape and all the screams of that word stuff. Because again, like it was very obvious to anybody who's like, who's frankly, whose perspective is not blinded by personal racism or just like the ignorance that comes with having been, come up as a political subject in the time of the war on terror and all that, to recognize that, like, yeah, when you start like labeling all of like these Muslim hordes, so to speak, as rapists and as like criminals who are coming to like destroy your way of life or whatever, simply because they resent it and not because you have kept them walled in with denying them everything from basic construction material to the ability to fish in their own waters, all before October 7th and everything like that. Then like, yeah, you are going to create, you are writing out the international permission slip for something like like a genocide.
That's why I get so mad when they like. Did you see CNN literally had Mahmoud Khalil on, and they were like, "Will you condemn Hamas? Will you condemn Hamas? Will you condemn Hamas?" 22 months into this fucking genocide, after he's already served a 104-day prison sentence that he should not have actually served at all, and it's just so gross because like the Hamas condemnation demands at this stage are directly trying to create a permission structure for the actions of Israel, like that Israel's gone a little too far, but like, can you really blame them? That's what this is. Can you really blame them for being violent for the past 22 months? Can you really blame them for genocide? Because after all, Hamas is right there. And that's part of the reason why I think it's important for even people like myself and people like yourself to openly state that outside of October 7, like every single thing that Hamas and the Palestinian resistance has done in defense of the Gaza Strip against the Israeli military is not only legal, but also moral. It's legal under human rights, international human rights. It's also moral. It's the correct thing to do. Like, what do you mean? It's actually Israel that is engaging in an illegal action even before this genocide, which is a crime of all crimes. Like Israel going into the Gaza Strip and bombing the Gaza Strip as a belligerent occupier is literally illegal.
And also, by the way, like Israel's kidnapped Palestinians too. Way more of them than Israelis were taken on October 7th, and they've been doing it for years longer. It's called administrative detention, and it's a process by which they can throw anybody the fuck they want in jail and keep them there. There's but again, to a Western audience, what is immediately going to scan is like more sympathetic, like sans context, the person taken from their homes in a night raid by a guy holding an AK-47, or the person who is taken in a relatively sanitized operation by a uniformed person who, is then disappeared into a prison system that you don't hear anything about. And whose families, by the way, aren't able to go on the press and able to talk constantly about the pain of not having them at home, the pain of their arbitrary detention and all this and so on. It's a very like part of what I think, in addition to like, we were talking earlier about like what's going to happen when international investigators and people are finally allowed into Gaza, if they are, inshallah, and we're able to determine something, like we're able to divine something like a picture of what's happened. I also believe that there's got to be like a similar kind of, like it's not going to happen anytime soon, but the permission space that was just created for people to totally dehumanize Palestinians by, again, like not listening or examining any context. is not even considering the Palestinian hostages who have been that way for decades at this point, is it's good. It's part of what has made us less human as a population. It has made us less in touch with what I think it means to be human, what it means to be moral, what it means to feel the pain of other people, and hope that we can alleviate it and build a better world. Like, it's just we just decided that they don't look like us, they don't live like us, which ain't exactly that true. They play Call of Duty just like us. They want to feed themselves just like us. They want to live in a free and happy world just like us. But our society is committed to saying and demanding the opposite.
Let's take a look at what Senator Lindsey Graham had to say about Israel and Gaza just recently, like on his Sunday Meet the Press circuit that he participated in.
President Trump's.
And then after that, I'm going to make my Jewish guest, Noah, read a Felix tweet because I can't do it myself.
All right. You read one of my own tweets.
Yeah.
Netanyahu to, quote, finish the job this week. I know that you are in touch with President Trump. You're in touch with Israeli officials. What are you anticipating is going to happen next? What does finish the job mean, Senator?
Oh, yeah, you're...
Well, I talked to Cindy McCain last night. Here's some good news for the people in Gaza. Humanitarian quarters are now going to be open. Israel's going to work with the UN, the World Food Program, to get some food into these people who need it. But I think what the topic we're talking about today is a change in strategy. I think President Trump has come to believe, and I certainly have come to believe, there's no way you're going to negotiate an end to this war with Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization who is chartered to destroy the state of Israel. They're religious Nazis. They hold Israeli hostages. I think Israel's come to conclude that they can't achieve a goal of ending the war with Hamas that would be satisfactory to the safety of Israel. And if they're going to do in Gaza what we did in Tokyo and Berlin, take the place by force, then start over again, presenting a better future for the Palestinians, hopefully having the Arabs take over the West Bank and Gaza. But I think going forward, Christian, you're going to see a change in tactics, a full military effort by Israel
change in
to
tactics,
take Gaza
very
down
different
like
than...
we did in Tokyo and Berlin.
I like that he said a change in tactics, and then he just described the exact tactic that Israel has applied so far as though it's a fucking significant change in tactics. Like, there is no more that they could do in terms of bombing the Gaza Strip. They have already done exactly what he's talking about, which is like Tokyo and Dresden. Okay.
When?
Senator, President.
Which is the reason why I said it is like, here is Representative Dan Goldman says, Gaza is on the brink of mass starvation. Israel and the U.S. and the international community must collaborate to ensure a massive surge of humanitarian relief immediately. This war must end. And let's be clear, Hamas can end it today. Fuck you.
Not true. All right.
Here's what Felix said.
Israel obviously deserves a Dresden aerial campaign every day for a generation, but we're even more fucking rotten as a country. I can't think of very many places where the elected officials would be surprised that a genocide they facilitated could end up looking bad.
And then he says, as I said before,
I hope this at least causes some aid distributed by someone other than the sociopathic criminals of the Gaza, the GHF. But this whole act is like John Wayne Gacy doing a tearful PSA for missing young men in the Chicagoland area. I think that's about right. I mean, there is like...
I just saw the first thing that he said, which is, I can't read that.
I will say that, like...
Given my background.
Yeah. Okay. I think one of the things that's just kind of nuts to me is the degree to which it is still persisted among the American political and media class that Hamas could end this if they wanted to. That that lie is to me one of the more crazy ones that people are trying to pull off in July of 2025. Israel has said that that's not the case. They say it over and over again.
But no one repeats that truth in the Western media, and that's precisely what it is. Like, it's just like this is only talked about here, right? Like this is I am one of the few outlets that consistently, alongside like, Drop Site and, Democracy Now, Sam Cedar with the Majority Report. Like there are very, very few media outlets, none of which are mainstream, that actually correctly talk about Israel's role in spoiling the ceasefire negotiations. Zeteo as well. That most people are just completely deluded. They don't even think about it. I don't think. Like they just don't. They don't care to think about it. I think some people kind of understand it. Maybe they're frustrated. Like, why isn't this happening? Why is there no ceasefire? But if all of these like reputable institutions and trusted officials, like all the way from Anthony Blinken to Witkoff and the Trump administration, in unison is saying it's always Hamas that is the responsible party for violating these ceasefire negotiations or not coming to the table and making ridiculous demands without ever revealing what those ridiculous demands are, by the way. Because the ridiculous demands are a permanent cessation
what ends
of
up
hostility.
happening, like, and this has been like the way it's worked now for like the last few times that this has happened, has been that Israel and the U.S. like claim like Hamas did something, the negotiations, that Hamas like demanded too much or that Hamas wanted a pony or something like that. And then you just have to go and look at what Jeremy Scahill says to essentially get like anything, to get the truth, to get anything resembling like an actual like breakdown of what happened there. Because also, by the way, like the Western news media, I think when it comes to sort of, again, it's related to the idea of how like, oh, well, they're like crazy Islamists. They're not rational people. They're like, like they're committed to the destruction of Israel. They've all these crazy ideas, and they rely on those like really crude racist assumptions to, suggest like, oh yeah, well, there's no way that we could figure out a cease, that a
With
ceasefire
them.
could be with them. You kidding me? Certainly not.
Phil Gordon, White House, NSC, and State Department under Biden.
He was Kamala's top foreign policy person.
Says, even if this leads to a meaningful change, still obviously to be determined, the Israeli government's decision in March to break the ceasefire, blockade Gaza, and escalate militarily will prove to have been catastrophic. It made no real difference against Hamas, led to immeasurable additional suffering in Gaza, failed to free any hostages, further divided Israeli society. I don't know if is Israeli society that divided?
It is, but like not in the way that like not in a productive way. I'd put it that way. Like it's divided along the axis of like kill them all and kill them all. You know, like it's not. I would also say that the other piece of like what makes Israeli society is like it needs this conflict to function because it's also not like a. Like it's not a country with a lot of equal. It has extremely high income inequality. Yeah. It has like it's what remains of its welfare state within like the 48 borders is like being eviscerated all the time. And by the way, like a fifth of the people who live there are Arabs, and those people are, many like they were